Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have 3 great stories for you, my dear viewer. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Refuse to pay the $600 you owe me? Guess what? Now you owe double. As I transitioned out of the U.S. Navy about 3 years ago, I decided to sell my beloved Saturn Vue, which was on the decline, and bought a much newer RAV4. When I returned home, I now had my shiny new car and wanted to sell my old one to someone who I thought would take care of it. I'm sappy like that. My cousin, C, was dating a guy who we'll call ex-D-bag. I'd met him before and he seemed chill, so I verbally agreed to sell him the car for $2,000, half up front and payments when he could do so. An important factoid for later is that when you transfer the title, you tell the state what you're selling for and get taxed on that. We were discussing telling the state that I was selling it to him for less to lessen the tax. I don't remember why, but last minute I decided to tell the notary the full price I was selling for. Good thing I did. After a few months of sporadic payments and a really nasty breakup between C and ED, turns out he was a serious D-bag. Surprise, surprise, the payment stopped. Now I was hopping between my dad's house, near C, my mom's, 8 hours away, and college, in between, and takes around 10 months out of the year. He had missed months before, so I wasn't too concerned, but after 3 months, I messaged him about the payments. The conversation went as follows. Me: Hey ED, sorry to hear about the breakup. How did you want to give the money to me now that C isn't acting as a go-between? ED: I paid the money. If C decided to take it for herself, that's not my problem. The car's now legally titled in my name, so it's your problem. Delete my number. Have a nice day. Me: Okay. Very dubious. Me: Hi, Aunt and C. Did ED give you the remaining $600? A and C: Yeah, no. Me: Hi, ED. Me again. They said they didn't receive it. How did you send it? I can track it down. ED: I gave her $600. It's not my problem anymore. Don't text me again. Well, alrighty then. Since he can get me for harassment and continuing to contact him, I decide for a little malicious compliance. I take all the texts, get my A and C to agree to testify if needed, put together a list of his payments and dates, the car title receipt, which says how much it was sold for, and take his butt to the local district court. Now, as I said, I was bouncing around a lot, which is why this took so long, to be honest, but it took about a year for this step, in which a lot of research was done, and apparently a year was the lowball estimate on the statute of limitations anyway. The biggest pain in the rear was making sure his address was up to date. He used his grandmother's as a mailing address, and after he was served, he moved again, likely trying to get rid of me, LOL. I know when he was served because I received a message from him on the day he was. The conversation was as follows. ED: Excuse me, but I thought we settled this a year ago. Me: Well, sorry, but there is still $600 missing, and you told me not to contact you, so... ED: I already told you I paid. I have to deal with $8K from my DUI and $7K from my motorcycle accident. I can't deal with this petty stuff. If you take me to court, I'll countersue you for stress and garnish your wages for missing work. At this point, he's trying to get me to tell him what I have on him, that I can prove he's in trouble. I tell him that he can find out in discovery. He repeats that he would be happy to pay if there was a discrepancy. Which, please? If that were true, we wouldn't be here, now would we? Then he started ranting. ED: You have nothing on me. It's obvious you have no proof. Isn't suspicious that C got a new car? It's obvious where the money went. I'm not concerned about going to court at all. I was just trying to save you the time and money and blah, blah, blah. Eventually, I just give up talking to him and say that the court will handle it. See you then. He made it clear that his ace in the hole was the fact that we had a verbal agreement. Show me our signed agreement. Huh? Where is it? Fun fact, verbal agreements are enforceable, and C was there to witness it. Now, he gets a month to respond to the summons, guilty, not guilty, etc. Then a second date is set for the hearing, but if he doesn't respond, it's a default judgment. Last day, he shows up and agrees that he owes the money and does not intend to fight it. Awesome. The court enters judgment for the $600 plus all my filing fees. I did get slightly confused when I got the news of default judgment because I thought he just didn't show up. Not that he didn't contest it. At this point, he gets another month to appeal. The day after the date is passed, I gleefully message him again. Me: Hi, ED. It's been a month since the judgment and I haven't heard from you. How did you want to proceed? ED. Judgment was wrong. I'm fighting it in court. I never signed anything. That's my defense. We'll see you in court. Me, incredulous. You didn't show up. You didn't respond to the letter, which the court knows you received, and you didn't appeal within the 30 days. Remember, I thought he didn't even show up. ED. I did show up. I told her I was fighting. Not my fault they processed it wrong. I lost a whole day of work and I'll be suing you for that too, plus whatever else I lose over this. My parole officer and I discussed it. What you've been told is severely wrong. I just stopped responding. My next step was to file the judgment at the county court, make sure it gets signed after judgment by the judge, learn from my mistake, then file for writ of execution. Remember again that all these fees just get added to the total amount he has to pay. Turns out that he moved sometime in all this, so the sheriff just subpoenaed his address from the post office. Turns out he was living with his new girlfriend. And finally, the conclusion. Just last night, my dad says, guess what? You got mail. It's from the sheriff. I'm like, oh, gimme. Now, I was expecting something about that he was fighting the writ. They couldn't find him. What my next step was, something. What I didn't expect was 2 escrow checks for the full amount owed me. I squealed in absolute delight. I told my mom, my cousin, my aunt, and will gleefully have the checks cashed on Monday. Thanks, y'all, for reading. And our second story. Company lays off hundreds of workers, gives them blank taxi checks to travel home. Mayhem ensues. Tonight, I caught a taxi home, and the taxi driver was telling me about 20 years ago, a big company made hundreds of workers redundant for no good reason except for cost savings. I think it was an airline company, which is ironic for what happens next. So these workers were made unemployed and are rightfully upset. At the farewell shindig, employees were given blank taxi checks to get home safely. Here in Australia, these are called cab charge vouchers. They're essentially a blank check to catch the taxi anywhere and are charged back to the company's expense. Now, the important thing to remember here is the cost for the taxi fare was being debited to the company that fired the workers. Another thing to note is these cab charge vouchers were very popular in corporate Australia from 2000 to 2010, but I don't know if they are anymore. The idea was company employees could get drunk in the city at a special event and catch a taxi home on the company dime. So these hundreds of employees are in the city of Melbourne for an end-of-year breakup, but many of them have no job to return to. How are they going to spend their last day as an employee? At the end of the night, after a few drinks, the plan unfolds. Dozens of ex-employees start catching taxi cabs to far-flung and exotic locales all over Australia. Some catch taxis to Geelong, 1 hour's drive, some to Bendigo, 2 hours drive, some to Sydney, 10 hours drive. One enterprising individual made it all the way to Cairns, 32 hours drive, essentially like a down-under version of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. All expenses are being debited to the company that had just made them unemployed. Needless to say, the taxi drivers couldn't believe their luck at this huge payday. The taxi driver tonight was telling me all the old-timers still talk about that night. An entertaining story. And our last story. Don't mess with your electrician. Time, late 70s. Place, a medium-sized Midwestern town. Players, me, an electrical contractor, and Guido, the hotshot from New York City. Probably Bayonne, but who cares? Setup. Guido has shown up in town and announces he's going to open the first disco in town. He's flying on borrowed money, spends a ton on advertising and promotion, rents a big space in a big strip mall, and proceeds to hire local contractors to build his disco. I come in with a 4-man crew to do all his electrical. It takes 2 weeks and then some because he keeps asking for more stuff and I oblige. Come payday, 2 days before his grand opening, I come in with an invoice for $3.6 thousand expecting payment in full. We sit down at a table, he and I, along with some 200-pound meatball who's a local I recognize. He offers me $350 cash for the whole job. He argues that we didn't have anything on paper, so I could take it or leave it. I think about it for a minute and decide to accept, so he gets up to go fetch the cash. While he's gone, I look over at Meatball with a questioning look, and as if he knows what I'm going to ask, he says, "Yes, I'm here to keep you from beating his butt." He further volunteered that I wasn't the only one. I collected the $350 and leave. Opening night, the parking lot is filling up, there's a line at the door, and Guido is up front collecting his door, $10 a head, and I pull up in my 1-ton all the way around by the back door. I rig a chain and a pallet on the back door so he can't come out the back, wrap a 1-inch poly rope around the riser on his service, tie the other end to my back bumper, and jerk his meter clean off the wall, making a huge shower of sparks, buzzing, and pops, then calmly drive back around the front and park at a fair distance from the front door. After a minute or two of silence and darkness from the club, people start spilling out demanding refunds. Apparently he wasn't interested in giving out refunds, so after a few more minutes, I saw 6 or 7 coked-up rednecks drag him into the parking lot and beat the crap out of him, empty his pockets, and leave him laying there on the curb. He left town inside 24 hours. But wait, there's more. In a similar incident a couple of years later, I got stiffed by a crappy biker bar for a couple of service calls. Not that much money or as big a deal, but they threw a beer bottle at my van as I was driving away, and the dent just set me off. I came back at dusk on a Friday night about a week later, parked on the other side of the shopping center, set up a ladder, and carried my wire shears across the roof and snipped their power lines right at the weatherhead and left. They called the power company, who came out, found the stubs sticking out of the weatherhead too short to connect to, and told them they needed an electrician to come replace their riser before they could reconnect. Ever try to find an electrician on a Friday night? Or a Saturday or a Sunday? LOL, it took until Monday before the lights and coolers were back on. I toasted about $400 worth of beer in their coolers, plus their whole weekend take. Moral of the story, do not F with your electrician. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.